I personally built a 14 by 16 foot timber frame summer kitchen at our last house in Georgia. We found it was something we used year after year for parties, family get togethers, outdoor grilling, shade, and just having coffee in the morning while catching up on the news. We knew we wanted it to be larger. When we moved to North Carolina, we decided to build another summer kitchen. We decided on 20 by 30 feet as a good size to include a kitchen area and a living area. My previous timber frame structure had two beams that were almost 300 pounds each, so I knew this timber frame structure was beyond my do-it-yourself capabilities. We found a timber frame company called Carolina Timber Works in West Jefferson, North Carolina. We had a choice of wood and decided on white oak. I prepared plans and submitted it to them for review and quoting. Surprisingly, my design was pretty accurate, but they created three-dimensional drawings, and I was confident they knew the beam dimensions for the spans we needed. While we waited for the white oak to arrive at Carolina Timber Works, we prepared the foundation. Although I loved doing masonry and had built stone corner columns for my fencing, I needed the 4 stone support columns to be precisely the same height. We also wanted a fireplace. I know my limitations, and building a correct firebox is also beyond my capabilities. I hired the same team that did extensive stonework when we built the house. The foundation was now ready for timber frame construction. My first job was to dig 2 trenches, 18 inches deep, from the house to the summer kitchen for electrical, Cat 7 wire, and water. I also dug a trench for sink drainage and separate trenches for landscape ADS piping for runoff from the roof. At this time, I dug the base for concrete pads for the cabinets, built forms, and poured concrete. I placed 1.5-inch gray PVC piping in the one trench and included a rope in the pipe so the electrician could later pull wire through from the house to the summer kitchen. The electrical and plumbing pipes were pre-planned to come up through the concrete pad exactly where I needed them. I covered up the trenches and had the masons lay pavers for the walkways. When our white oak was scheduled to be cut, we were invited to the Carolina Timber Works factory. The facility is beautiful. The milling machine was impressive. The huge timbers would roll into the machine and be milled to precise specifications. Each piece was marked for later assembly on site. It was a lot easier than the bandsaw and chisels I used on my first timber frame structure. The team arrived on site. I had to rent a forklift for the assembly. The timbers were moved down the driveway, through some trees, and into the backyard. The timbers came together flawlessly. The trusses were built on the ground and hoisted into position. It was enjoyable watching these craftsmen at work. All of the joints were pegged with huge mallets. There are no metal fasteners. The structure was built in a day and a half. The timber frame columns aligned perfectly centered on the cinder block uprights. My design and planning were coming together. The next step was tricky, the electrical. The last thing you want to see is wires visible on the beautiful oak timbers. As usual, I began with a plan. First, I routed the tops of the trusses so I could hang 2 ceiling fans without wires showing. I had a 16-inch long, 1-inch auger bit and found I didn't have enough power to drill holes diagonally through 12-inch white oak beams. I purchased a DeWalt D-handle drill that had the power I needed. I ran 115-volt outdoor wire and 12-gauge speaker wire. Since you can't drill down the center of the columns, I built chases on the back of the two rear columns to cover the wires. I ran the wires in the hidden grooves in the beams and down the columns to where the cabinets would be built. I drilled holes through the concrete column base plate and ran gray PVC piping through the cinder block columns so my wires were never visible. I sprayed the timber frame with a recommended Heritage Natural finish to protect the oak. I was told oak beams crack as they age. This is to be expected and doesn't compromise the strength. My next step was the roof, which timber framers call the deck. Boards aren't available to span my 24-foot roof, so I staggered 16-foot and 12-foot 2x6-inch tongue and groove spruce with the seam landing in the center of the trusses. This way, no seams were visible from underneath. The slope of the roof was only 26 degrees. With a nail gun, this was actually a fun part of the project. I covered it with roofing felt. I added a pressure-treated wood fascia under the entire perimeter of the tongue and groove decking, so it would look more finished when you looked up from below. This was especially important from the front, where the ends of the tongue and groove spruce boards were visible. Also, this prevented the aluminum roofing edge from hanging loose. I could now work below in the shade. Then I was ready to build the cabinets. I designed the cabinet outer frames in an L shape to house two top burners, a 36-inch grill top with stainless steel drawers and cabinets below, a 2-drawer refrigerator, a 48-inch sealed cabinet, a sink, an under-sink cabinet, a pull-out trash cabinet, a refrigerator, and an ice maker. A separate cabinet would house home theater, electrical equipment, and a subwoofer. I decided to buy DCS stainless steel appliances because it was the only company I found capable of supplying everything I needed. I didn't want my refrigerators to have different handles than my grill and stainless steel doors. I was even able to buy matching stainless steel doors with frames to incorporate in the special purpose cabinets I designed and built. I built 2 plywood cabinets in my shop to the exact size I needed, painted them, set them in place, and built the cabinet outer frames around them. Since this would be covered with Durock and stone, I used steel 2x4s for the framing to avoid seasonal shrinkage. The design of the cabinets is complicated. I literally bought all of the appliances 6 months before they were installed so I could get exact measurements to fit them into my cabinet structure. I just kept building my cabinet framework, following my design, making sure the cabinets and appliances would fit along the way. I used pressure-treated 2x4s as a base, secured with a .22 caliber nail gun. A metal cutting blade easily cut through the steel 2x4 framing studs. The structure is built with hundreds of self-tapping screws. Once the framing was done, I ran the electrical to ground fault counter outlets and electrical switches for the lighting and fans. I screwed on the Durock cement board and added the stainless steel doors. I made sure I included rear vents for the refrigerators and the ice maker. I installed column lamps and track lighting on the top of the horizontal oak timbers. I hung the fans. We were ready for some finishing touches. I scheduled my masons to lay 24 by 24-inch porcelain tiles on the floor and to finish the stonework on the fireplace, column bases, and the cabinets. As I noticed water pooling around the area, I dug in more drain pipe and drains. Before the masons arrived, we noticed rain pouring onto the floor from the lawn and beds. Summer kitchens get wet in bad storms, but this was a drainage problem. I dug footers, poured concrete, and built a cinder block wall across most of the front, 3 courses high. I am always impressed when I watch masons lay brick or cinder blocks. They do it so effortlessly. They trowel the mortar so quickly and accurately. As an amateur, it is easy to waste mortar as you try to place it on the edges of the cinder blocks. Nevertheless, it is enjoyable and rewarding work. Ignoring my instructions, the masons placed the floor tiles together without space for grout. They squeaked when you stepped on them. I pulled up the floor and relaid the 150 tiles, trimming them as needed. I had a wet tile saw and am pretty competent at tile work. I was happy the masons did the hard part, making the floor perfectly level. I used an underlayment over the base to prevent erosion and insects from nesting under my tiles. As I laid the tiles, I carefully added temporary plastic spacers to make sure my tiles were perfectly spaced. I also poured concrete everywhere I had a raw edge to keep the tiles from shifting. It also creates a more professional, finished look. Since I was adding 1/8 of an inch to each tile, over 30 feet end tiles had to be retrimmed to fit. Each piece had to fit perfectly. When completed, I broomed a polymeric sand between the tiles. This sand hardens when wetted. Where there was no wall at the entrance, I dug a 4-foot drain to prevent water from flowing into the summer kitchen. I had the masons cover these cinder block walls with stone and top with flat stone. They did an amazing job. We wanted a trouble-free roof, so we chose to install a metal roof. I contracted to have that done because it takes a specialist. I had built a plywood water diverter called a chimney cricket before the chimney to make it easier for the roofers. I also contracted for gutters because I wanted a seamless gutter. Instead of downspouts, we added rain chains. I had already dug trenches and buried ADS drain pipes for the roof runoff in 3 corners. I built forms and packed concrete by hand for the water to fall from the rain chains into the drains. During a storm, we saw the rain chains swinging wildly, so I anchored them to the concrete drains. There is nothing more fun than to watch the rainwater cascade down a rain chain during a storm. We ordered granite counters and had them install an undermount stainless steel sink. The electrician ran wire through my underground pipe and connected it to a weatherproof subpanel I had installed and pre-wired. He connected the other end to my main electrical panel on the house. After that, I could install the faucet and connect the 220-volt hot water heater and the cold water line. I plumbed the sink drain. I dropped in the grill and the top burners. I slid in the refrigerators, connected the water line and filter to the ice maker, and slid that unit in under the granite counter. The final step was to install the OLED television above the fireplace, connect 5 home theater speakers, and attach the Wi-Fi to the Cat 7 wire. I have to blow leaves and debris off the counters and floor after a storm, and there is general cleanup to do before guests arrive. I take the cushions inside for the winter and cover the furniture. In the spring, the floor needs cleaning. Several times in the summer, we clean the stainless steel with a cleaner and use granite sealer once a year. There is nothing like a roaring fire, watching a movie at night outside, or having dozens of neighbors over for a personal concert. We loved having the grandkids jump out of the pool and grab a popsicle or soda with parental permission. The lighting at night is extraordinary. We thoroughly enjoy the results of this project.